Thursday edition, officially 2 weeks away from the NFL draft. And is there a surprise pick for the Broncos in the first round? We talk a lot of running back, we talk a lot of tight end, but as Yoda would say, Mace, there is another.
Defensive line lurking below the surface. The fellow that you see there, of course, is Kenneth Grant out of Michigan, and that's a player we know the Broncos have met with. They had a formal interview with him at the NFL Scouting Combine. But there are some concerns with him, and there were some that Mel Kiper Jr. pointed out yesterday on his conference call. And we've talked about him as being somebody that could be there at 20, certainly run stuffer extraordinaire with some pass rush punch as well. But some mocks now have him dropping into round 2.
Yeah, when you first brought up Kenneth Grant, probably back in January, Mace, I was like, I don't feel like he's going to be there because, of course, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, both those Michigan defensive linemen, are going to be quite coveted, and Graham's probably in the top 5 if I were to guess right now. We look at Grant, though, with the weight concerns that are now out there, and this is the standard cycle, right? Here's a really good pick. He's a really talented player. Let's nitpick him to death. Well, weight concerns and a defensive lineman, this is an issue that is kind of regular for that position, and, well, Grant's now the guy, not necessarily getting dinged, Mace, but perhaps that's why you see him fall out of some first-round mocks or even fall to 20, where I initially thought he wouldn't be a few months ago. Yeah, maybe he is there, and maybe the Broncos have a decision to make based on the big 4. And where's Colston Loveland? Where's Tyler Warren? Where's Ashton Jeanty? Where's Omarion Hampton? And yes, now, where is Kenneth Grant if he's there at 20?
Well, checks in officially at 331 pounds, and the question is, him staying at that, or getting
ballooning.
Too big, getting too big, basically. Like there's a certain level you want him to be at. You don't want him to get bigger. You don't want him carrying too much weight on those joints. You're talking about him shortening his career lifespan if he does. No question that when he plays, he's explosive, creates problems, but can he stay in shape? Can you keep him on the straight and narrow in that regard? And that's why, as Mel Kiper Jr. suggests, when he was on the big conference call with a lot of national media on Thursday, this is why, talking about him being somebody who now, in his opinion, drops into round number 2.
In terms of Grant, the question is going to be the weight, Ryan. If he can keep that weight at the level it needs to be, then the stamina, the endurance improves. And then he stays low. Low man wins, right? And he's winning those battles. When he's more upright and the stamina and endurance, wane a little bit because he's not at the weight he needs to be, then you see a little bit of an issue there. So I think it's if he just maximizes what he does best, which is when he's at the right weight, he can be more than just a stay-at-home type. So he could be a Buffalo Bill. That's what they're looking for. There's other teams as well looking for that type of player in the late first round. And I think Buffalo would be a good landing spot. If he can maintain that, he could be a really good pro because he is disruptive, and he can get into the backfield. He's not just, like I say, a guy, a stay-at-home type, free up the linebackers. We're not looking for that now in the first. So if teams believe he can be more than that, they'll take him in the late first round.
Yeah, and that's the question mark with the big body like that, Mace, is, okay, is he more than just really difficult to move? Because Grant certainly is that.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's the difference between being just a run stuffer and being a plus player in the pass rush. So is he first and second down, or is he also a true 3-down defensive lineman? Basically, with all respect to DJ Jones, and DJ Jones can do some things in the pass rush as well. Sure. But are you DJ Jones, or are you something? Are you Zach Allen, or are you DJ Jones? Right? Zach Allen gets paid more than DJ Jones, like long term. Like DJ Jones got a nice raise, but DJ Jones is a first and second down player primarily. Zach Allen, if you get the long term extension done for him, Zach Allen's going to cost you a lot more with good reason. You need DJ Jones, but you're really going to need Zach Allen.
Yeah, you really like the defensive linemen that can do both because they need to stuff the run, strengthening the core of their defense. Grant could help them do that, but interior pressure makes every quarterback look mortal. And last I checked, you got some pretty good quarterbacks in the AFC West. So having a guy like that would definitely benefit this defense. It's just, as you and I've discussed off air, Mace, where's the big four at? I don't think Grant goes ahead of the big four, and I don't really worry about the weight concerns because of one guy. His name's Bo Lowry, and he's awesome. So get Grant in shape, keep him in shape, and think Lowry could do that. But the big four have to be gone. That's why we spend so much time talking about those four players.
Yeah. Now, there's an increasing likelihood the big four are gone. To go back, the big four are Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland, Ashton Genty, O'Marion Hampton. Certainly, three of the big four definitely are going to be gone. We talk about them all because I think if any of them are at 16, I think you even think about trading up right then and there. If any of them are at 16, if Colston Loveland's at 16, for example, shoot, I think you start picking up the phone. And yeah, I know you got Evan Engram. That's well and good. I still think you start picking up the phone. Evan Engram didn't take you out of the picture for Colston Loveland if he fell to an acceptable point. But the thing is, do I expect Colston Loveland to fall to 16? No, I don't.
Not with the whole friend 14.
Yeah, our friend Chad Ryder several weeks ago was talking about the Broncos trading up to 12 and getting Colston Loveland.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that happens, but it wasn't out of the realm of realistic possibility. That's still where tight end resides in terms of the Broncos. I mean, look, they've brought in Terrence Ferguson. They brought in Gunnar Helm. They brought in Harold Fanning Jr. They're still taking a look at tight ends early in this draft.
Yes.
It's not off their radar at all.
Yeah. And defensive tackle on that radar. But again, let's see where the big four land. And for me, Mace, if Kenneth Grant's is a concern and you're looking for the 330-pound defensive tackle, you got a couple of different choices. I've always liked Tyleik Williams, the Ohio State kid, who's a freak. Now, wingspan is about 5 inches shorter than Grant. And then Mike Kliss, I guess his mystery mockster retired. I'm going to have to ask Kliss who it was because he never would tell me. Maybe you knew, Mace. But he had Alfred Collins to the Broncos. I believe that might have been in the third round. But either way, there's, like running back, like tight end, we need to bring defensive tackle into that conversation because you have a smorgasbord. You have the guys that can knife through the 290 pounders. You have the 330 pounders who, they call that the planet theory. There's only so many guys that are that big and that athletic. Grant is certainly amongst those, but so is Tyleik Williams. So is Alfred Collins. So it's almost what kind of defensive tackle do you want? You want Zach Allen. Maybe you can find one of those.
Well, the thing is, that's why, Kenneth Grant's obviously not the same type of body type as Zach Allen. The only reason I brought Zach Allen in the conversation is that if Kenneth Grant keeps his weight at the acceptable point, that means he can be a plus player in pass rush, and that means you can have him out there on third down. You keep that weight in line, he can do more things for you, and then all of a sudden you're not talking about him being somebody who rotates in on first and second down. Maybe you're saying, okay, he's actually in sub packages. He's somebody you're using maybe a little bit differently than perhaps the initial plan would have been, and maybe perhaps the initial scouting report would have been, because he has that dynamism to his game. So that's about also maximizing the player. That's why, I think what you mentioned about Bo Lowry is key there. Now, it's key that the player has to do it himself.
Yes.
You can, the old cliche, you lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You can put the player on a plan. The player then has to stick with it himself. The nutrition staff, the training staff, they can only do but so much. The player ultimately has to finish the job.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of why you have these meetings is, and why you do the work, the scouts do the work in terms of talking to people around the program, digging to people around the universities, talking, why they do all that, why you even talk to your own players that are connected to those college programs and all that, is you want to get all that information. You want to find out, okay, is this guy really likely to stay on the up and up, perhaps, to find out if all this is just draft bluster or if it's something real. Because this is the other thing. I mean, remember last year we did the show on all the anonymous scout reports.
You should start a Twitter handle that's draft bluster and just retweet the anonymous scout stuff.
Oh, because I was actually yesterday, I was going back and reading I was reading some of the anonymous scout stuff from last year. It's kind of hilarious to look at.
It's always terrible.
On Bonex, for example. Mm-hmm. I think we should do an anonymous scout show before, like in the next, maybe that'll be our Friday show. Because Bob McGinn, and he's doing it through Ty Dunn's Substack now. Bob McGinn did some of his anonymous scout reports recently, and I was reading some of his anonymous scout stuff on running backs. I think we ought to do a show talking about the anonymous scout reports on running backs. Some of the stuff on Marion Hampton, like, what? Like, yeah, you watch this guy? Yeah. I debunking anonymous scout, because there's always like one anonymous scout who will say something that just does not comport with reality on these guys.
Yeah, it's very bogus. We'll say that.
And some of it is like tinged with racism.
Thing. Yeah. Well, we're in the draft. I always remember the reports of when Cam Newton came out. It's like, why is he smiling?
Oh,
what?
God.
Yeah. And I may or may not name who that was by name. But either way, we won't talk about that necessarily. Tomorrow's show, we can break down anonymous scout. Today's show, Mace, and surprise picks. Let's do the Tet McMillan thing. Yeah. You brought it up yesterday, and I kind of wanted to shelve it because it is a large conversation. So we got a little bit of time here to kind of stretch our legs out on this, because if we talk about surprise picks, big four, where are they at, is Shedeur falling, all this, Tet McMillan is there. Luther Burden is there as well. So if you want to roll him into the conversation as well, let's just talk wide receiver, right? I personally do not think wide receiver in the first round is the way the Broncos will go. I don't think it will be the surprise pick. Defensive tackle seems more likely. Running back, tight end, defensive tackle. You're getting one of those in each first 3 rounds. I don't know the order yet. Wide receiver doesn't fit for me, even if it is someone as talented as Tet McMillan, who, depending on what you think of Travis Hunter, I have Tet McMillan as the best receiver in this draft. So surprise picks. Let's get into that Tet McMillan conversation, because it complicates things with Courtland Sutton, who you're reportedly, and from their words, saying they're, dealing in good faith. Sutton's going to show up to voluntary. They're dealing in good faith. You lose all the good faith if you draft Tet McMillan.
Well, it's the whole old draft day quote, right? You live in a different world now than you lived in, say, 3 or 4 days earlier, right?
It's true. Yeah.
Things change. The board changed. Like, maybe you think, oh, well, we didn't expect Tet McMillan to be there. Or by the way, according to some people around him, no one calls him Tet. T-Mac is what people call him. So I'd say we retire Tet, and we say T-Mac or Tetaroa. So you react to that. It maybe you're playing the whole the game of the Bradley Chubb. You're like, oh, we didn't expect him to be on the board. We didn't expect Tetaroa McMillan to be there at 20, and when we saw him there, we had to pounce, right? I mean, to just kind of go through for some reason my phone is going off here. Need to stop that here. Anyway, maybe you just play the thing of saying, oh, well, we didn't expect him to be there at 12 or 20, because there are some mocks that have him going pick 12, pick 14, pick 15. And to play a clip here from Mel Kiper Jr. yesterday, it applies to, say, Colston Loveland or Tyler Warren falling if they fall a few picks earlier. But you do have to be prepared for surprises to happen, for players to fall unexpectedly. I mean, this is something the Broncos maybe have to react to. Like Colston Loveland falling, if he fell past like pick 15, pick 16, I think if you're the Broncos, you have to prepare to maybe make a little bit of a move up, in part because the Chargers might make that move for Jim Harbaugh to reunite with his Michigan tight end. And if you really like him, if you really love him, you may want to make that move, even though you're not taking care of running back, but you're talking about a great player. But you have to react if there's somebody whose talent you love, and you have to react accordingly, even if that means messing with your plan a little bit. You got to trust your board, trust your board if somebody falls unexpectedly.
In this draft, where if a certain player, take a Tyler Warren, for instance, if he were able to get past 5, 7 and gets down where maybe Chicago could get him with the Colts, if they see, hey, Colston Loveland and Warren's a little bit of a separation, will they move up? Will somebody kind of jump up to look at a Tyler Warren? The Chargers, if Colston Loveland is still there, and say Warren goes in the top 10 and Loveland's there for the Colts, or right before the Colts, will the Chargers move up and get Loveland, who Jim Harbaugh, I'm sure, would like to get. So I think there will be some movement in terms of the teams moving up.
Yeah, everyone's got their first-round pick right now, and everyone's in the place they're supposed to be, Mace. 5 teams change positions. Depends on Howie Roseman, who I love. Like, how's he going to move the Eagles around? But I think we're going to see a very, very active first day as boards adjust. Players might fall a little bit, and that includes T-Mac, Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren, and maybe even Ashton Genty if he's not going to pass the Bears at 10.
Yeah. But, I mean, Tyler Warren, I don't think Tyler Warren's falling. Is there a point to which he fell that you start picking up the phone?
Yeah, Cowboys, 12. And we look at Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers last year was pick 13.
Would it even be 9?
Yeah,
Saints?
For sure.
Is that where the value, you're like, whoa, okay, hold on here. Because you get to 9, you start getting to the range where it doesn't cost you a future 1 to move up. That's where you start thinking, interesting. Like when it gets to the range where it doesn't cost you a future 1 to move up, to me, that's where you start having a conversation if somebody unexpectedly drops that you love. That's where you start saying, okay, let's blow. You're willing to blow up a plan, especially if you're looking ahead and looking over the horizon and seeing that next year's draft doesn't look as good as this year's draft. That's where you start thinking about some plans.
And if you're a team like the Saints, I know that they're popular to mock to Shedeur right now, as his slide is real, but it's like they just need so much.
Yes.
They would take extra picks and move back and collect so that they can eventually get through this credit card debt that they have called the salary cap problems.
Well, and that's where the Shedeur Sanders conversation becomes interesting. We did a show on him earlier this week. How far does he fall? Does he fall past them? Some say yes, some say no. That came up yesterday with Mel Kiper Jr. Let's listen to his thoughts on the notion of Shedeur Sanders falling through the draft, and especially in regard to the Saints, because the Saints, I think, are a key pick to watch. And if the Broncos did make an audacious move up for somebody who fell unexpectedly to 9, it would be with New Orleans. Like if the Broncos did do something that shook up the draft moving up, it would probably be with Sean Payton's BFF, Mickey Loomis, in New Orleans.
The Shedeur, do I think he'll be there at 21? I didn't in the mock 4.0. I didn't go into New Orleans. I know Dan Orlovsky doesn't think that's a great fit with Kellen Moore, considering the quarterbacks that Kellen Moore's had. But does Kellen Moore, remember, Kellen Moore at Boise State didn't have the great arm, didn't have great size, but was a really good quarterback in the collegiate ranks. How does he feel about Shedeur? How does he feel about it? He's had a lot of talented quarterbacks. Shedeur, from the mindset of the quarterback. You talk about, Matt Miller did a thing today on Shedeur. He said, okay, decision-making accuracy, A. We know he doesn't have the strongest strongest of arms. We know he's not running the 4.6, but decision-making accuracy, A. What do all these coaches, what do they all scream about when he's got to be a better decision maker. He's got to be more accurate. And that's what this kid does. Throw with anticipation. Hang tough in the pocket. Yes, he's got to get the ball out of, they all do it. Tick faster. Took too many sacks. Well, that offensive line was horrible. So for me, and playing in weather, they got to decide, Joe, playing in Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Baltimore, Cleveland. Are they okay with the arm strength with Shedeur? Are they okay with that? Tom Brady went to New England. He didn't have the strongest of arm coming out of Michigan. That's why he was a late 6th round pick, right? But he went to New England, and he thrived. He's the greatest of all time. There you go. So how do they feel about Shedeur? Will he be there? It's a possibility. It's happened before. Aaron Rodgers slid to 24. Others, Brett Favre slid out of the first round entirely. Boomer slid out of the first round entirely. Geno Smith slid out of the first round entirely. Quarterback, Chad Pennington dropped down to 18. Remember that? I thought the Steelers would take him. They took Plaxico Burress in the top 10. He dropped to 18. Then the Jets took him. They had 4 first-round picks that year. So, to me, yes, it can happen.
Shedeur Sanders falling and Jackson Dart from Mississippi going somewhere early in those first 20 picks. These are the things that could change everything in terms of someone unexpectedly falling into a range where the Broncos could nab him that you don't expect, or the Broncos phone ringing like mad on the back end at 20 from teams moving up to get Shedeur if he falls to 20. So you've got to be prepared for maybe somebody to drop because maybe a dart goes earlier than expected, or the phone to ring for a move down possibility to pick up more draft capital and thus take advantage of the quarterback premium that does come in from teams wanting to move up because Shedeur falls. This is one of the reasons why it's very hard to project what's going to go on with the Broncos right now, because they'll probably be calling. And then if they stay at 20 as you get to pick 12, 13, 14, there's a good chance that if Shedeur Sanders is on the board, that phone is going to start ringing. It's been too quiet, Cease. It feels like all the noise is going to happen on draft night.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I think we're going to see a lot of activity. Let's check in with an anonymous scout. Tomorrow, we will break that down because it's ridiculous every single year. And,
yes. It's time to do an anonymous scout show and rip those evaluations apart.
Yes. Tear them up one side and down the other. But before we do that, we will retire today's show. Surprise first-round pick in the draft or no, Mace? Just yes or no? Because for me, it's running back or tight end. They're taking a back or a tight end. Maybe defensive tackle, but that's it.
There could be, if it's a surprise, it's defensive line.
Okay.
But even that's like a mild surprise. I don't think, I'd be shocked if you saw, say, corner in round 1.
Right.
I think if it's a non-running back or tight end, it's defensive line. It's the other position that's pretty stacked this year. And we know they've talked to Kenneth Grant, and we know they've talked to Walter Nolan, 2 first-round caliber D linemen. They met with them both at the combine. I would expect it would probably be one of those 2 guys. I'd be fine with either. I think the value on both of them is excellent there at 20. If you got either one of them,
sounds good to me.
Is defensive line a position of need? It's not pressing need, but it's below the it's slightly below the surface. And the way you use defensive linemen in today's game, you use them rotationally. Yeah, you could say that's a need, because that player, if you draft them, are they going to play high leverage snaps in year 1? Yeah, they would. That player absolutely would play high leverage, meaningful plays immediately. They would be relevant. But would that be the best way to support Bo Nix in year 1? That I'm not sure of. And if you're staring at the board at 20 and none of the big 4 are there, and those are your options, that's where I'd probably say, okay, probably let's move down and see what the value is, if you can get better value. If the big 4 aren't there, I'm probably more in line with a trade down. And then let's get some volume. Let's get the more darts at these positions that we're trying to target.
You all in? or not. We're all in with you. And Mace, we need some people's help on YouTube. How can folks do that?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell
so that you
never miss
vid. That's right. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammy saying OBT's BFD. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned and stay frosty.